Marnie, we're on. Sorry.
Oh, hi. I guess I'm starting out this episode of Go Indie Now, even though Mr. Joe Compton is usually the one that introduces us. So we're going to try it with me today. Wow. Thank you. Today is Two Series or Not Two Series, and we are going to talk about series writings. I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves. Let's start with, just because she's on my left, Christy Stratus.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christy Stratus. I'm the author of Anatomy of a Darkened Heart. That's the first book in the Dark Victoriana collection. Lock and Key is the second one. It will be coming out soon. And I am really thrilled to be here tonight. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm glad you're here. And why don't we just go to the next person? Let's go with Craig. Could you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Craig Gatiss. I'm the author of the Cartographer series. First book is Cartographer, second book is Reborn, and the third book is Timeless, and I'm currently working on the fourth one.
Sorry, you guys lost me for a minute. So, Joe, you want to go next, or did I miss Joe?
Sure. I'm Joe Compton. I am the owner and operator of GoIndieNow. I am also an author. My crime thriller is Amongst the Killing.
Thank you. And now, ML, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm ML Spencer, and I am the author of a series called The Rin War Saga. The first book in the series is Dark Storm, the second book is Dark Mage, and the third book is Dark Lens. And right now I'm working on another dark thing. So it's really happy to be here. Nice to see everybody.
Last but not least, Sunshine.
Hi, I'm Sunshine Somerville. I am the author of the Coda series, which is the Coda, the Ebonite and her Earthling, Pharmacon, and Zenith Prophecies. And then there's also companion stories to go along with my series. So thanks for having me too.
I'm so glad you're all here. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Marnie Kate, author of the Protectors of the Elemental Magic series. Right now I have 3 books out, and the 4th one is on its way. So I'm going to start out with just the first question. What makes a series in your mind? The question is, are you writing a series? Are you writing a trilogy? Are you writing a collection? And my question is, what's the difference? Feel free, if you just go ahead and shout it out.
Yeah, I'll go first because mine is probably the more unusual one, so I might as well start. Mine is a collection, and it's called the Dark Victoriana Collection, and the reason for that is because it does not go in any order necessarily. One book doesn't necessarily pick up at the end of the next, nothing like that. It just takes place in the same town. The whole collection takes place in the same town. You do have crossover between characters, and you have some scenes that might repeat, but from a different perspective, and you do see alternate things. So for me, what I would assume is a series usually picks up where the last one left off, or close to it, with the same characters who have gained like knowledge from the last book, for example.
And Craig, do you write a series, or do you have any opinion on this?
Yeah, actually, when I started the Cartographer, it was not really meant to be a series, and I just felt that when I ended the book that I wanted to continue it. I wanted to continue the story of Nathan Chambers, so I just wrote Reborn, and then I just got through that book, and I'm like, you know what, the story's just not done yet. So then I wrote Timeless, and it had an ending. But the 4th book that I'm writing now actually started out as a story about something else, but then the Cartographer universe kind of just did leave my head, so I implemented that universe into what I'm writing now. So it's actually going to be another book in the series. So I mean, I'm just gonna keep on writing until the story I feel is over.
And Mr. Compton.
Well, I don't write a series, but I'm actually starting one. I haven't begun to publish anything yet. And I have designs for it to be 4 books, but we'll see how that goes. But my current WIP is not a series. It's just one book, and I am producing a sequel, but I don't believe I will produce one beyond that. So I think I'll end it after that. But who knows? I may revisit those characters because there's opportunity for that. And maybe I'll do a prequel too. I know there's a lot of people who like, certain characters and would like to see more of their origin stories. So I think I might investigate that at some point as well. But for me, I am going to attempt one, but we'll see how that goes. Who knows?
And ML, I know that you are a series writer. Do you want to let us know?
Absolutely. Yeah, the Rin War Saga is a series, and it's planned to be about 5 books long. I actually started with book 2. That was actually the first book that I published. It was meant at the time to either be a standalone if it didn't do very well, or if people actually liked it, I designed it to kind of continue. But what I did do is I actually went back and I wrote a prequel, which became my book 1. And so I'm one of those strange situations where book 1 was actually written after book 2.
Wow. And I know that Sunshine has a series, and she's kind of branched off a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. My main series, though, kind of what Emma was just saying there is I wrote books 2, 3, and 4 first, and then went back and did 1. So my whole series is done. I kind of did them out of order too, but it's kind of nice. I always thought, I knew there was going to be 4 books just because each book happens on a distinct place. But I always think that a series is just something that you're telling the same story and it just continues from book to book. And I always knew that that's what mine were going to be, was kind of, that's how I would define a series, of like the same story continued rather than like a collection, like Christy was saying.
So that asks the question, do you think a series has to be constructed a certain way? I know my first 3 books are, the protagonist is Mara, but I have switched it up a little bit with the book 3 ending, kind of opened up the door to make a few of my other supporting cast become the main player. So my 4th book is about the original bad person in my book 1. So does that, with a series, do you have to keep the same protagonist? Do you just have to keep, how do you construct a series?
I do think that there are certain rules and things that make it a series that would, make, certain things you do that would make it a series. And you don't necessarily have to have the same protagonist. And in some cases, some series turn it on its head and switch it up. Who you think is the protagonist may become the antagonist by the end of the series, or vice versa. Or the antagonist is somebody that they bring back into the protagonist kind of side of things. But I think that with a series, there's certain continuation that goes along with that. And I think that's what defines a series, in my opinion.
Does anyone else have any opinions on that?
Yeah, I can say something. I know in my my book 1, it is a prequel. It happens 1,000 years before the rest of the series. So I actually have, for the most part, a different set of protagonists in that novel than I do in the rest of the series. Some of them do go forward. I won't say how, but what actually relates my book 1 to the rest of the series is just the consequences from book 1. Actually, you can actually see how that actually affects the future in the rest of the series.
I think one of the coolest things about, or the biggest opportunities in a series, is definitely character development. In my opinion, I love character development. That's like what I read for most of the time, the characters. So when you read a series, especially a long one like Sunshine's, when you've got a lot of books in that series, you have the opportunity to really build those characters so that you feel like you've grown with them, or you've watched them change over time or grow. And that can really feel like you know them. And I definitely think that's one of the things that's so great. Like if you have a standalone, of course, you only have so much time to make that happen. It can be a lot trickier. So that's something that I look forward to when I read a series.
Yeah, and another thing is, as you write a series, depending on how big the series is, you'll come to find out that storyboarding is really important. Because I know with my series is a science fiction series, so there's a lot of worlds involved and a lot of characters, and I just couldn't keep up with them all. So I just as they come up, I just basically spreadsheeting names and traits and all that stuff. And the fourth book that I'm writing now, which is Untitled, I'm not too far into it, actually started as a completely different story, and doesn't have the protagonist from the first three books in there. So until I don't plan on introducing him till later on, but it's going to merge this world and the Cartographer trilogy together, and blend both worlds together. So yeah, I mean, anything goes in series writing.
We have a question from our audience right now. Rebecca asks, do any of you give them a subtitle saying they are part of the series? I know.
Like, mine definitely say like book 1 of the Rin War Saga, book 2 of the Rin War Saga, book 3. So, yeah.
I guess mine does. I have the Protectors of the Elemental Magic series.
Yeah, same here. I have books 1, 2, 3, 4 on there pretty clearly.
Mine don't, because it's not a series, because it's a collection. It doesn't actually say the Dark Victoriana collection, which I have on the back in the blurb, but I don't have on the cover, because you can read it as any of the books as a standalone. And that's one of the important things, to not make it look like you have to read the first book for my collection, that is. So I don't really have a subtitle, but I will say that when there is a book that's coming towards the end of the collection that's related directly to the first book, I am going to have like elements of that in the title, so you can tell that they're related directly.
So with that, as far as how when you have your series, I'm going to kind of switch a little bit here. Did you plan them out? Craig just said that he has like a storyboard and keeps track of it and is kind of planning it out. Do you do this for your whole series, or do you just kind of what comes to you? I know for me, I might have a general idea of how things are going to go, but honestly, it's like there's some muse that talks to me and just brings out this other. I write about gods and goddesses, so sometimes I'm like, where did these people come from, or where did these beings come from? So I kind of just play with whatever comes to me, and then I try to line it up with the series. So are you more a plotter or a master?
Well, before the world famous plotters get in here and pontificate, ML and Sunshine, I will, as a pantser, defend that idea, but they'll be happy, or maybe encouraged, to know that, and Christy might be as well, because she did a whole panel on this, that I am moving toward the plotter area with this series that I'm hoping to create, because I've already plotted certain things out that I want to have happen in each section. So but I'm going to keep my pantser mentality for now, and let it come out as it's coming out, because it is flowing through me in bunches. So, which I think is, not, I think all plotters have that too. They leave some room for that, if I'm not mistaken, but I won't speak for them. But I think, there has to be some kind of organization, because you're trying to lead something to the next one, right? So that's my thought.
Absolutely.
Say that, like Craig, I mean, I'm in the sci-fi genre, so that's definitely, I've said 4 different planets, so you have to know every little thing, and since the same story carries through to all those, that's definitely why I'm more of the plotter, typically speaking, of having everything kind of figured out, at least how it's all going to connect in each world, so you don't have to drastically make something work that wouldn't make sense otherwise. But I will throw Joe a bone and say that I just started a new series, and I'm very much just kind of pantsing that, which was a very different experience for me, but I'm finding that that's also fun. And I've decided that that's a trilogy, but that's really the extent of how much I've planned this out.
I'll take it. Woohoo!
I will say this, that I only plotted the trilogy that I wrote. I do have 3 standalone books, and it was basically like what Joe said. It just flowed as the ideas came. I actually wrote some chapters, later chapters first, and then kind of went back because I just had this idea of something that was going on. That was just an awesome scene that I just had to write, but I wanted to create the backstory to it as well, so I wanted to develop it kind of backwards. So yeah, just for the Cartographer series was a more of a plotter, but then with the standalones, I was basically just throw anything against the wall and see what sticks type mentality.
I appreciate that. We have a couple of questions from our audience. So Rebecca had a follow-up to her series question. She said, if it's a standalone, is it still technically part of the series? I will say from my book, Maisie, my third book, and actually all my books, I try to give you a little bit of backstory. So if you read book 2, you're kind of going to know what happened in book 1. So you could pick up in book 2, but book 3, you definitely could pick up and read it standalone. But yes, it's still part of the series as far as my books are concerned. Thoughts on that?
I answered this. Yeah, no, go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I'm the same way. You could probably pick up most of my books, and you do not have to read the book that came before or the book before that. The only one that I actually did not tie up the end as almost a standalone is the last one. The last one actually ends on a cliffhanger. But other than that, each one has a definite beginning and a definite end, and you could read it by itself. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's definitely part of, I answered this question in the chat, but I want to say it here too. It's with a collection, part of the point of my having a collection was so that each book could be totally standalone. And that's part of why I don't put on the front that it's part of a collection, so that people can read it by itself, any book by itself. And there's going to be, you know, novels and short stories and novellas, like stuff like that. I wanted a lot of freedom to be able to do sort of whatever I wanted, which, you know, I am a pantser, so I need that. It would be difficult for me not to. But actually, I kind of want to put something out there that I saw in this one fantasy book that is along the lines of what you were saying, Marnie, when you were saying that there's a certain amount of like the first book and the second book so that you can pick up there. I saw this one fantasy book that has an entire something like 5, maybe 10 pages dedicated to whatever has happened before in the series. And it is like almost not literally bullet pointed, but it is in such detail that it is like, it's like studying for an exam. And I wondered like what you guys think of that. Because to me, I was like intimidated because I can't even remember all of that. But, you know, just along the line, it was a little bit much for me, in my opinion.
People might like that. You know, especially if there's a gap between your series. I've been lucky. I've wrote a book every year, so you don't have to wait so long. But after a year, are you going to remember all my characters? So, you know, that might be a nice catch up. Anyone else on that one?
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, I remember Christy mentioning that before in a panel, and I think as an author, I would find that interesting to see, because then you're kind of like, okay, what do they think is important? And then so I would look at it that way. But I think just if I was just going into it as a reader, I really think that would bother me. Just seeing that much kind of weird recap, I think is just very strange.
I would agree. That seems like a really strange thing to me too. I mean, to actually see like a bullet point outline, I would like to see like a little summary, like what has come before, give me a paragraph, give me something. Hey, that's it, you know? Even better yet, work it in context as you go.
That's the thing, yeah. It's just that there was, I guess, so much background to the story that it was just like this hefty, it turned into this hefty 10 pages, you know? So yeah, it's crazy.
We do have.
I watch a lot. I'm sorry. I watch a lot of competition shows, and they always roll back like the last 5 minutes of the show when they come back from commercial break. That drives me crazy. It's like if I'm not already watching it, I was already watching it. You know, I don't need to see what I just saw, but I guess it's for people who come in during the commercial break. But I don't know anybody who would start a show in the middle of it. That's weird to me too. But that's I don't. If that's kind of what you're kind of getting at, I think, and it is kind of strange because you want to feel, it's kind of sounds like maybe the author's treating his audience or her audience like they're kind of not with it. I don't want to say stupid, but they're kind of denigrating the audience a little bit by doing that, I think, because you got to trust that your audience is going to read what you want them to read, because you're writing a series and they're interested, and you just got to trust that they're interested and they know what's going on. In a lot of cases, sometimes the audiences turn out to know a lot more about your characters than you do. So, I think it's kind of redundant to do something like that.
Yeah, I kind of wonder like what percentage of people read that, especially because when I saw that, I started reading it and I was like, this is too much for me to handle and I can't remember any of it. And I just skipped it and went on to the book, and I could pick up fine. It was not a big deal. So yeah, I feel the same way, Joe.
So it might have been overkill on that author's, but once again, author's choice. You can always skip the pages. Rebecca's question, I think we answered all of hers, but Amber Sage had a question. Do you think standalone books don't get the same interest or attention from readers? And then the second part of her question is, are they mostly looking for series and not interested in single books? I actually see the opposite. I will see people saying, I'm looking for something to read, and then I say, I have this, but I don't want a series. So that's interesting. What's your take on that? I don't hear people clamoring for series.
See, I've experienced the exact opposite, and I'm curious to know if Christy has too. Going to book festivals and stuff like that, the first question I hear, the most often question I hear is, oh, when's the sequel? They haven't even read the book. They haven't even picked it up and looked at it and bought it yet. They just go, oh, do you have a sequel? Is this a series? That's the questions I get every single time. That question's the most asked question at any book festival that I have. And I know it's because I have one book on a table, but it's just kind of, it's interesting that I get that question more than I don't. So
yeah, I actually haven't put like a ton of time or effort or money into advertising or anything like that. Not even like PR releases or anything, just because I have read in so many places that if you don't have a series, people will read your first book and then forget about you. And so that's definitely a big fear of mine. So I didn't want to like spend any kind of money or like budget for anything if I wasn't going to see any return on that. I was going to lose my audience. So that was definitely a fear for me. And I do have the same thing as Joe, and I haven't done book fairs or conventions or anything, but people definitely are waiting for the second book. And I mean, that's definitely the first question they ask, whether they read it or not. I have the same experience as Joe.
Maybe it's like when you buy a certain car, then all of a sudden you see that car. And so maybe as a series writer, we see the demand for standalone and vice versa. Maybe it's always what you don't offer is what you notice the most being requested.
Yeah, I see standalone book success. But when you're an author writing a series, you do fall into the, if you do have a large following, I'll use George R. R. Martin as an example. He takes forever to write the next book, and it's people want to hang him in effigy at a certain point when he's not done with that book. So there's a lot of pressure. People don't understand that writers are busy. They're either writing or some people have other jobs that they're doing. So to commit yourself to writing a series, it is a commitment. And or standalone books, the reader's not expecting anything else. That's a complete story for them, and they have closure. Whereas series, they get antsy because what if something happens to the author and the next book's not done, and they get antsy, and then they start carrying torches through the streets. But so I do see a little more success with standalone books, and that could be the reason why.
If I could piggyback on that, I just was contacted by a potential reader yesterday asking me if my series was complete, because they did not want to read it at all unless it was already complete, because they're sick of waiting so long, between books like George R. R. Martin. She mentioned Jane M. Owl in her series. I think that she took like 20 years or something between her books. So yeah, reader expectations are a big thing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, of like people get all the time of like, is it done? Because otherwise they're not going to start. If they know that you could be a George R. R. Martin and just not finish the series, they don't want to start committing. I was also going to ask too, like I've heard a lot about like in fantasy and sci-fi, those seem to be very series oriented, but it's kind of interesting that some of you others who aren't in those series seem to be having the same problem with people expecting you to be a series. I just kind of didn't know if anybody else had kind of seen that genre wise.
I am all fantasy, so I can't answer for that. Good question though.
Contemporary fiction tends to be more standalone for sure. I've noticed that, like, you know, you look up Joyce Carol Oates or something like that, and they're all just standalone books, you know. I think.
It must.
Yeah, another name that comes to mind is Nora Roberts too. She writes a lot of standalone.
Stephen King.
Yeah, because crimes have endings, so it's really, I mean, for Nora Roberts, that makes a lot of sense. I think she's actually wrote a series though, like a serial killer series too. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting to hear everybody's perspective because I wonder if ML and Craig, you guys are sci-fi fantasy authors, right? And Sunshine as well. You guys, do you find that there's a stigma if you write a standalone book in that genre? Because I think that genre is really, to me, what defines the series. You know, you think of series most often, you think of all the fantasy and sci-fi series more than anything else, right? So I'm wondering if there's a reverse stigma because if you write a standalone in that genre.
I can't think of a fantasy that isn't a series.
Me neither.
I know. I was just trying to think.
Not one.
They're out there. They're just not coming to mind right now.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I actually see on Facebook, like, people will ask questions. Does anybody know a good fantasy standalone? And people say, yeah, I tried this one, or this one. I don't know them. But they're out there.
I have read
one of authors that I like is Ari Salvatore. He writes Drizzt books. They're like based on Dungeons and Dragons, Dark Elves, stuff like that. It's fantasy. It's not a series. It's weird how he writes it because he's writing about the same characters, but in some senses they're not really series. A lot of the books are standalones, but he'll put that character, each story that character will be in a different situation and interacting with different characters. So it's not like book 1, book 2, book 3. He does write some series, but he does have some standalone fantasy books. So I've seen, he's the only one that can come to mind that he had success, and I guess Neil Gaiman too has had some success. If you know, some of his books can be construed fantasy, standalone. That's really the only ones I can think of off the top of my head.
So, my question to all of you is: writing a series, what are the pros and what are the cons? Is it worth it in the end? What do you consider the best part of it? What do you consider the worst? He's got a thought on that.
A lot of blood, sweat, and tears goes into writing a series. The cons is just you have to dedicate a lot of time to writing a series and keeping it consistent. And but the pros are when you're done with the story, you can look back and see that, hey, the story is done. I put a lot of work in it. And, you can feel satisfied that you've reached your readers with, and hopefully they can become engaged in a series.
I agree. Definitely agree on all those points.
Yeah, I'd agree too. I'd say the biggest con is definitely trying to keep things consistent, especially if you have very dense world building, I think. But I think also you just can get very easily burned out on writing the same thing. I think I'm in the middle of the July 100K word challenge, where it's just you write that many new words in a month. And I was working on something tied to the Coda series, and I was just I just couldn't do it anymore because my brain was just fried from that story. And then I got this random idea, and now I'm writing this new trilogy. So I think like you definitely get burned out. But then the fun thing is too, you can, you know, you invest so much in these characters and you get to know so much and you get to show so much. And I think that that can be, for people who are character driven, that can be a very big pro of spending that much time with your characters.
Yeah, I definitely agree being character driven. I totally agree. It's very exciting to see them from different perspectives, different angles, or see them grow or anything like that. And for me, originally, like Craig, my first book, Anatomy of a Darkened Heart, was going to be a standalone. Totally agree. But it didn't end up going that way because the next book just started coming to me. And then I was like, oh, I really want to make a collection, this whole town. And when it was originally supposed to be 5 books. And then even that it felt too short. I was already getting withdrawal by the end of the second book. And on the one hand, I was looking forward to moving on to other things, but I just was really, really getting withdrawal. And so I decided, okay, well, let me see what other stories could need to be told. And I really started coming up with a lot of stuff. So I think I'm going to be in this collection for a very long time, maybe doing other things on the side, like in between or something. I have another book half written, and it's going to be shorter and not connected, but it's just kind of interesting how as an author you can like have a hard time letting go. And of course, like if you notice that the characters aren't growing or aren't doing anything or it's over, then you have to, of course, like just deal with it. But I guess that withdrawal made me realize how much more there was to do with it. And, you know, I'm pretty excited about that.
So I'll come at this from a different angle as a reader of series that I've read series. And the thing that I love most is watching characters grow. I think that is the most rewarding thing about reading a series. Of course, the endings are always the thing that really is sad about a series most of the time or some of the times. I mean, I know there are happy ending series, don't get me wrong, but you don't want it to end. And I think that's why people gravitate towards series and clamor for you guys to write more series. I mean, poor J.K. Rowling probably got bombarded after the last Harry Potter book because, you know, she ended it. You know, she made a satisfying ending, but for her fans, it wasn't satisfying enough. So I think you know, I'm okay with that. I can deal with that part of it, but it does sadden you a little bit. It's the reason why I haven't finished Christie's book is because I am holding on to hoping for the end and you know, I'm just holding on to it a little bit, and I need to finish it though. I definitely need to finish it, but I got so enamored, and that's cool thing too. Is here's a standalone book that made me feel the same way that a series made me feel. These characters are growing and they're evolving, and it's very interesting and introspective, and I think that's what draws me to this series mostly. I mean, there's some cool like backstories and things like that I also gravitate towards, but for the most part, you know, I don't need 15 prologues. J.R.R. Tolkien. I can just deal with an ending, but you know, some people, they don't want it to end. So I think that's, as a reader, that's tough. So.
If it's ended well, though, you can appreciate it. If you feel like, yes, they ended it, they took away what I loved, but at least they wrapped it up, so I'm not wondering forever. What's her name? Gail Carriger, her Solace series. Parasol Protectorate series. She had 5 books and she did wrap it up, and I was devastated for it to be over, but she did do a good job in that. So I guess that's key, that you end it and end it well. Maybe. So ML, you didn't answer yet what you thought the worst things and the best things about being a writer are. A series writer.
The best thing is just watching the characters grow. Like in my series, I have characters that start out one way and then completely flip 180 degrees. Protagonists have become antagonists and back and forth. And it's really hard to do that in the space of like a single standalone novel. But through the course of the series, you can really like get into a lot of depth, complexity, background, and growth on the characters. And that's what's really important about a series to me. You know, as a reader of series. I really fall in love with characters. I really feel like they're my friends. I invest a lot of personal energy into them, and it's hard for me when a series ends. I mean, it really is, especially if it's one I've been following for a long time. The satisfying ending is always nice, but I still almost feel like, I've lost a friendship, or somebody's left me sometimes, if it's a really extremely good writer that I followed for a long time. So I think that's like the good things that you can get out of a series. Bad things, yeah, it's complex, kind of like Craig, I have an intense, like storyboard behind my series. It's like hundreds of pages, hyperlinked files on Word documents. That's really kind of hard to like keep track of and everything, but it's what gives depth and complexity to the world. So it's kind of what's necessary. So.
And so I don't know if everyone answered what kind of, what their genre was. I'm sorry. My attention span, once again, is a squirrel. I know I write low fantasy, so more urban. It sounds like you might be writing high fantasy words.
I write grimdark fantasy. So low, very low.
Oh, no, it's low. Okay. Yeah, because, like low, more like Harry Potter versus high, more like.
Mine is actually technically science fantasy.
Oh, okay.
So it's like a little bit of a blend between science fiction and fantasy.
And I think we have a question. Nope, it was answered by Mr. Joe. So I am out of questions, but I do want to hear more about the series that you guys are writing, a little bit more about, because you guys answered everything I had come up with in some way or another, and I don't want to rehash. If anyone wants to share anything about their series or any tips that they may have for someone that's out there saying, I'm going to write a book, but I don't know if I can commit to this series thing. Do you have any advice for a potential reader? I know we're so full of words today.
I have a question too, if
Absolutely.
So guys.
Let me ask a question.
Yes, go for it.
I want to know, for the series writers, how much did you glean from writing? Well, obviously with Sunshine and ML, who wrote backwards a little bit, but how much did you glean from the first experience of writing that first book that you added to the next books, and how did that change for you? Did it seem smoother? Was there certain things that you decided that you weren't going to share because you wrote the first book and you got audience feedback? How did the experience of the first book affect the subsequent books?
I can actually answer that one. When I wrote my first book, I thought I had to describe everything. I thought key to writing was making sure that if I walked from A to B, that you were going to know how I got there. So one of the things I noticed in my first book that the other books don't have is I wrote a lot about food and what people were eating, and very detailed. I believe Sunshine said you're going to get really hungry if you read my book. So I did learn maybe you don't have to walk everyone, take them by the hand and take them through your whole book. So that's my opinion on that. The other thing I did learn about writing a series is, especially if you write it in first person point of view, sometimes people will tell you things that are lies. Your characters will lie to you. And then in book 3, you find out it's a lie. It's not addressed. It was just, that was their perception. These voices in your head were telling you something wrong.
I would like to state for the record that I said it should be a scratch and sniff book so that we could smell the food.
Exactly. That was my favorite.
That's my only input right now, but yes.
That would be awesome.
So no one has any more input on Joe's question?
I guess I'll add again. But I would say, I think you definitely learned kind of the sprinkling. I guess if you have like an overarching story, I think by writing the first one, you kind of learn like how you want to pace out how you develop the whole thing. And I definitely learned that best by writing the second one first, in a way. So then I could know when I wrote the first one, how much I actually wanted to reveal from the beginning. So that was just kind of a thing that worked for me.
Well, that's part of a question that J.D. Estrada asked us. He said, how far do you plan on it? Which to me, that kind of goes into I always worry about not revealing too much about the surprise in the end. So that would be my question. If you have a series, you know it's going to end with this kind of, how do you not spoil everything before it gets finished? And then how do you decide to which characters stay and go? And I know that sometimes if your character does leave your book, people get very angry. And if they know you, they will text message you when they finish your book and call you everything in the book. But how do you decide who gets to live and who gets to die, or who is no longer in it because maybe they're not relevant anymore? Or how do you decide that?
I guess I can go because many have died in my series. It's funny because I had some people, family members read the books, the first book, before I started the second book, and then they told me which characters they liked, which characters they didn't like. And what I like to do is if I decide on two things, if a character goes, one, it has to move the story along. I don't want it to just be a pointless exit. But two, I like the shock value too. So if I think it'll move a story along and it also might create a shock, there might be a little bit of attachment to the reader. It might get them to keep on reading, see what happens with the other characters. So sometimes it's hard to kill somebody off. I've had that. I have had a couple of characters where I'm like, I really don't want to do this, but I think to move this story along, and I don't want it to become too cliche, that they're just immune and they get out of every dangerous situation, and without a scratch. That's the point where I'm going to have to kill that person off.
Yeah, my characters decide for me. I don't make decisions. They do everything. They even decide their names. They've switched names on me before without telling me. So they definitely actually lead me in those directions, and it can be hard. Sometimes you run into a situation that a character puts themselves in where their fate is a shock, and you're really not happy about it. But that's what they choose to do. I mean, they do it. I think that putting them in, sort of what Craig was saying, putting them in difficult situations and letting them have that, letting them lead you, yes, but also putting them in a difficult situation and not letting yourself have the easy way out, not letting them have the easy way out, and ensuring that you push through that so that the reader is sort of like, oh, wow, I had no idea what was going to happen, because most likely if you don't know what's going to happen and the character's even not sure, they're not going to know either.
Very true. So do you ever regret a decision you made in your series? And then do you also, a second question on that is, if it is maybe not a regret from you, but from your audience, do you let your audience determine how your book will go, your series will go? Do you play to the series, or do you play to the muse that is guiding you?
Since I was talking before, I'll just continue, sorry. There was one particular thing that happens in Anatomy of a Darkened Heart that, when you're mentioning regret, I had to take literally a month's break from writing the book because I was really upset about what happened, and I hadn't planned it. And it really made me sad, for that character. And I couldn't get past it. I had to actually get over it, sort of, to continue writing, which was an odd experience for me. I had never had that happen before, but I just kept going. I didn't want to try to change that. That's how it was meant to be. So I just went with it. And as to your question of, do I let readership decide what would happen next? I think if somebody said to me, I'd really like to see more of this character or of that shop or something like that, I would definitely put a lot of thought into that and see if I could pull it off. But otherwise, I just go in the direction that it seems to pull me.
We do have a question from our audience. Brad Infinity. I'm sorry, I'm saying your name wrong. I think it might be an L or a 1. He wants to ask a question to the panel. Would a frame tale be accepted as a sequel in the series? And my question to that question was, what's a frame tale? And I've been advised by someone very wise that a side story with the framework of the original. So would the side story with the framework of the original be considered part of the series?
I believe it would be considered a spin-off to the series.
Right, like Three's Company and the Ropers.
Like Rogue One, in relationship to the original Star Wars series.
Funny, I was just going to mention the same word, same story. Yes, I agree. I think Kodo series has some spin-offs as well, some framework stories that are tapped in the framework of the world that is created, but it's not part of the story that's continuing on. If I'm speaking for Sunshine, like I know.
Yeah, you kind of knew apparently. But no, I was actually going to jump in on this one because I actually kind of a weird thing because you don't really know where they should fit in the series sometimes, because I called mine the companion stories because they definitely tie in. They are minor characters that you meet in a series, but then each companion story is specifically about them. So it's kind of a tricky thing knowing how to promote those or work them into the series, because you don't have to read them to know the series, but they are definite supplemental stories, I guess. So I consider them part of the series, but you can read them at any point, if that makes sense. I wouldn't number them of where they should have to go.
That's pretty much, yeah. No, go ahead, Craig.
I'm a huge Stephen King fan, and when I think, what the person's asking the question, I think of Stephen King's Dark Tower series that actually incorporates characters from all his other, well, not all of them, but most of his other books, and it even includes himself in the series, ironically. So I think that was a great example of a story that's not, it's a series in itself, but it's not tied to the other books except in characters' names. So he throws characters from a lot of his other books into the series. So it's kind of like, it's a story in itself, but it also includes characters he's created from other stories.
Yeah, my whole collection is based on that kind of an idea, where in Anatomy of a Darkened Heart, I mentioned the shop Lock and Key, and there are a couple of scenes in there. It's not a focus, it's just a couple of scenes in there. And then the next book is Lock and Key, and you see an exact scene from there, just one, and that's the only thing that's exact from Anatomy, but I based the whole book around, that one shop in there. And so it's not necessarily the whole book isn't based around one event, but that event does appear again, and the whole book is based on characters you barely see in Anatomy. And that's actually going to be the way it goes through the entire collection.
Your own Darth Vader moment. I was gonna mention that's the clever marketing on your part too, because now everybody knows that Lock and Key is the second book, and it does tie into the first book a little bit with the way that you do it. So yeah, I was thinking about that too.
That says series to me, though. I know you're calling it something else, but collection series, I still don't get the difference, to be honest.
For me, the difference is the collection is I just have that one scene, for example, as opposed to you would see the other characters from another book temporarily. They might be mentioned or they might be in a scene, but it definitely does not continue from that. I mean, that's when I think series, I think book one, book two continues from the last book. Book three continues from book two. Mine can happen at the same time. They can happen parallel. They can happen at different times, but there's tiny bits of crossover like that. So it doesn't really continue from that point. It goes sort of here's Anatomy, here's Anatomy, and here's Lock and Key, and it goes off that way. And then here's Love's Bloom, and it goes off that way, sort of like that, if that makes sense.
So I might not be writing a series is what I'm hearing.
Maybe.
No, I feel like it's still a series.
Probably is.
we'll call it what it is. You can put a pig on a lipstick and still pig. Craig looks like he has some thoughts on that.
When is a series not a series?
Yeah. He's like, no, I'm not going to get involved. You're crazy. Yes. So as far as series, after you're done with your series, I have this major plan in life that I came up with this idea that my first book is called Remember. So then the books involved would be all based on named after the first letter. So Remember, Exigency, Maisie, Envy, Meg's Winter, etc. until it's spelled out Remember again. So when you bought my box collection of your books and it's sitting on your bookshelf, you would spell out Remember. So with that, my series is going to be done in 8 in my mind. After I'm done, what will I do? Will I do more series? I'm thinking I'm going to not do fantasy anymore. I'm going to dabble back into a little bit of romance, a little bit of just normal fiction. Will you guys take the same path, or do you feel like this is your genre that you're going to stay in, that this series will be what you write for a while, or do you have like a definite ending in mind?
Like I kind of said earlier, like my series is done. And then I keep doing the companion stories, which obviously are in the same world, the same genre. I have a question about that later. But the new series that I've started is largely just based on a lot of what I've been reading for other authors, which is urban fantasy, which just seems really fun and not nearly as complicated. I know a lot of them can be, but the ones that I've read haven't been, and those seem like they'd be a lot of fun to write. As well as read. So that's just kind of something completely new to me, which I never really thought I would do genre-wise, but it's been, I mean, I've been at it like 4 days, but it is really fun to just dabble in a completely new thing and completely new world and genre. So I think I also did a children's book. So it is a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be to just dabble in all of these different little things and explore how you can be creative in different ways.
Very cool. Anyone else going to be diverging from their current path?
I probably would like to go back and finish a book that I started a long time ago. It's a historical fiction novel about the quote-unquote true story of the Knights Templar, kind of like the anti-Dan Brown. I did like tons and tons of research on it, and I just kind of finally just put it aside, and I would like to eventually get back to it and finish it off.
And as a series writer, can you do that to your readers? Stop. Like I'm on book 4. Can I stop right now and go write another book and then come back?
Ask Patrick Rothfuss and see how well that did for him.
And George R.R. Martin, he wrote some short stories in between.
So the answer is probably
yeah. If you have a rabid readership, then no, it's hard to do that.
Got it. It doesn't matter. They talk to me anyway. I'm still going. I quit writing after this last book, and I've already started again. So I'm sure a lot of you guys feel that way. This is it. I'm not going to write this anymore. I need a break. And then next thing you know, you wake up and you're typing 20 pages and are late for work because you had to get that story out.
I've actually written in 3 different genres, and I actually had the idea for my latest book. While I was writing Timeless, the 3rd book in the Cartographer series, I had the idea for The Last Hero, which is actually more of like an action-adventure, Watchmen-ish type of book. And it's a completely different genre than sci-fi, so yeah, it's interesting. I can kind of flip back and forth because I've written horror, fantasy, and science fiction.
Has anybody thought about ever cross-genring within their series, like writing something that would have an element of like a romance novel, or I know romance is a bad example, but well, actually maybe not, but something that would stand alone. If you stood it alone, it would be a different genre than what your series is really about. Has anybody ever explored or thought about that? Or am I crazy?
I was just going to say that was exactly where I was going to go with my next questions too, of just kind of genre bending within a series and how everyone feels about that. Part of the Coda series is like really each book kind of has a different genre a little bit, just because of kind of the world. So book 1 is very dystopian because it's Earth. And then the next book gets a little more psychological, not quite horror, but I would say it leans in that way. And then the third book is very fantasy because there's magic. It ties in with science, but there's magic on the third planet. And then the fourth one kind of goes back to dystopia, even though it's not on Earth. And then there's zombies and angels and stuff. So like, I know I mix genres all over the place, and I find that really fun. And I've gotten from a lot of readers that that's just kind of a unique thing. So I just kind of wondered what other people think about doing that in their series.
I'm not going to be doing that personally, but I would read a series that did that, and I might even be more likely to read more of the series. I'm definitely one of those people who reads series sometimes, but there's just so many books out there that a lot of times I want to try a new author and stuff. So I'll read the first book in a series and then I'll move on to another book. But if I knew that the genre would be different and that I would see like a different side to the series or a different side to the author, I might even be more likely to continue the series, I think.
I concur.
I agree with you on that. But I do feel like, how do you let your readers know? Like my series, the first book is very sweet and innocent. The second book is very dark. The third book, we get back to a combination. Fourth book, we're to dark. Like, how do you like let your readers know this without, you know, my book series is going to grow as I grow. I've been writing it for 4 years, so obviously I've changed. My series is going to change with me, especially since these voices are coming from me.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, you can let them know right away what the tone is or the genre just by the cover oftentimes. I mean, that's the first thing people see from your book. So if it's darker, make the cover darker. And then the other thing would be the blurb. You know, you can give hints of how things are changing, how you're growing, how maybe your characters are maturing, so things are getting more darker. That's definitely the thing that I try to do in each of mine to kind of show that they are different, each one. And I've noticed that with some other writers too.
That's good advice. I notice Christy's thinking very hard on that question. She's thinking, I'm going to write a series now and I'm going to figure this out. I'm abandoning my collection ways and I'm now going series.
That's it. No, I agree. I think that does make it really clear, especially with the cover, because so many people do buy books or even look at blurbs based on the cover. So I totally agree that you could definitely, like Sunshine was saying, if you darken it and lighten it and, you know, things like that, it definitely gives a good hint as to what it's going to be.
Definitely. I did not think of that, and I do have covers that do that. So,
and likewise, actually, to show, like I've said, mine doesn't say Dark Victoriana Collection on the front, but each of the books is going to have, I don't know how well you can see, but these little corner things on them. So it's sort of just, I want to have some elements that are always the same, like the font is always going to be the same, and those corner elements are always going to be the same so that you can actually put together a little bit easier that they go together.
I do appreciate people that number a series. I feel like that's helpful because I do have a couple authors that have written, this one has written 13 books, and sometimes like, why don't you just have the number in your title for me? Could you put it up there so I don't have to try to figure out where I am when I want to go back and reread it? I don't have to Google this storyline series and then, oh, okay, now I can go back. So,
do yours have numbers?
Mine do have numbers.
I don't remember. Okay.
Yes. It's been very important to me that they all have numbers because I like to say it. Protectors of the Elemental Magic series, book the 3rd. It's very, no, yes. I do have numbers on mine. Just for people like me that can't remember what they read on what day because they're too busy wanting to write books. And reading is a luxury that I don't understand. But I think we've almost run out of all of our questions in the audience. I don't see anything left from them. I feel like the indie authors are all just having a really great time. Rebecca said that, Christy, that your books look really pretty together on the bookshelf. So I think that's a nice way to end it. So if everyone, I think we should take this time to say goodbye and have everyone tell us how we can reach out to you. And we could start with Christy.
Yeah, sorry, I just had to unmute. I'm Christy Stratus. I'm the author of Anatomy of a Darkened Heart, and I also run the Writer's Edge, which is another type of channel that we have live discussions. We will be having one on the fourth Thursday of every month, so we will have one on the fourth Thursday of this month as well. I hope to see you over there, and I really enjoyed this. I learned a lot about series, so if I ever decide to do an actual series, now I will know what to do.
Thank you, Christy. And Craig?
Yeah, I'm Craig Gatiss, author of the Cartographer series. You can reach out to me on Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, under the Creativity label. I also author of Vendetta, The Last Hero, and the Guardian Chronicles, which are not series, which I don't know, maybe with all this series talk, I might have to turn a couple of them into a series. But yeah, I had a good time. This is actually my first panel ever, so hope I didn't embarrass myself too much.
No, you're fantastic. Definitely great. ML Spencer.
Hi, I'm ML Spencer, author of the Renwar Saga, and you can get a hold of me on, I've got a big presence on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, or you can just check out my website, mlspencerfiction.com. And I've had a really good time tonight. Really enjoyed listening to you guys. I think I have added to my reading list probably. So more to read. Thank you very much.
Sunshine.
Yep, I am Sunshine Somerville, the author of the Coda series, and I also have a website where I do blog reviews for exclusively indie authors. So if anyone wants to check those out, Christy has one on there, I know for sure. Definitely check those out. And again, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, I'm everywhere. And this was a topic I always enjoy discussing, so thanks for including me.
I'm glad you joined us. I'm Marnie Kate. You can reach me at marniekate.com or on Facebook. Twitter, not gonna lie, don't really understand how to use it. Don't do very well when I do use it. Instagram, Snapchat, I'm on there too. More things I'm not really good at keeping up on, but my website, you can reach me, or also Facebook seems to be the easiest way. And last but not least, I'm gonna let Joe Compton say goodbye, close us out, and tell us a little bit about himself, and how to reach him.
Thank you, Marnie. Thank you for hosting this wonderful panel. Thank you to all the panelists for joining us. And thank you to everybody in the chat. It was a lively chat tonight. I really appreciate it. You guys are awesome, as always. It's been great. I don't think we solved the world's problems into series or not to series, but I think we gave everybody a chance to plead their case. And I think, you know, whether you write a series or don't write a series, I think the most important thing to note is that you can grow in any direction you want, whether it be standalone or a series. You can grow characters, you can create worlds, you can do a lot of things. And I think that is what defines us as writers, not whether we write a series or not. Although it is nice to have some continuation and some love and to hold on to characters and everything that we do. We obviously remember that as much as anything else we do. I am Joe Compton. This is Go Indie Now. And I just wanted to mention real quickly, we have a new show up that we just debuted last night called This Week in Indies. It'll happen every Thursday. It's a little news show. I cover some interesting discussion topics on what's going on in our worlds, in our indie worlds. And we have a couple features within that as well. So everybody go check that out if you don't mind. And if you like what we're doing here and you haven't before, subscribe, like, comment, share. We appreciate all of that, and it's just a great thing to do, all of these panels. Our next one will be in August, and we're going to talk about reviews. So I hope everybody's ready for that. Should be a lively, wonderful conversation. And don't forget to check out Christy's podcast, The Writer's Edge, which will happen at the end of the month, the 27th. There's rumors that certain somebody on this panel will be on it, but we'll see. I don't want to spoil anything that Christy's going to reveal. So, but we'll have another flagship show and another Sunday Fun Day. All of you guys are so lively. I would love to see you guys try the Sunday Fun Day tags for me. I do a booktuber tag. Go out there, grab one. There's plenty out there to try if you haven't done one yet, and give that a go. And remember, it's always time to go indie now. And with that, we'll see you next time.